Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Duncan Malkinson. I'm the interim chief administrative officer for the Village of Pouce Coupe. I have the great privilege and the high honor of being joined by Mayor and Council this evening to talk a little bit about the Village's 2026 financial plan. I'm also joined, maybe I could do introductions right off the top. I've got Mayor Danielle Beach here. I've got our illustrious CFO, Josh Cariotta here. I've got Councillor Marcel Whittle here. I've got Councillor James Wall, Councillor Curtis Rabel, and a few members of the public as well. So thanks so much for taking the time to be here, and thank you for taking the time to join in online as well. We definitely appreciate any engagement on the budget that comes. So tonight we wanted to go through a few different items that are included in the Village's 2026 financial plan as it presently stands. First, we wanted to talk a little bit about the process and what all is involved in the process from budget development all the way to adoption. We also wanted to talk a little bit about who does what, because often that can help folks get a sense of where their value is being driven and where their tax dollars are going. We also wanted to talk about where our revenue and expense picture, so where the money comes from and where the money goes. And we wanted special emphasis on some Peace River Agreement funds this evening as well, particularly to provide an overview on some of the accountability that the Village has with those funds and how it's driving the Village's budget strategy. Next, we wanted, Council's put a particular focus, or rather reviewed, core versus non-core services in 2026. And, one item that's, that's been an important emphasis or an important lens that Council's put on their budget. So we have some remarks prepared about that. We also have an overview of our major 2026 projects that are anticipated for this year. Lastly, before we got into the real details, the heavy lifting, so to speak, led by our CFO, Josh, I'll go through some property tax implications or property tax scenarios under Council's current assumed property tax assumptions. And then we'll sum it up and open it up for questions. So thanks again for being here, and I hope you're buckled up. So the Village's budget process and budget processes generally. So in British Columbia, all local governments are required to adopt a 5-year financial plan annually. And all of these financial plans are required to be balanced, in that meaning that revenues and transfers can't exceed the total, expenses and transfers can't exceed the total funding sources. So budgeting for a deficit is prohibited. Council is also required to have a formal opportunity for public input before the plan is adopted, and this is a large keystone or milestone in providing or obtaining that public input. But of course, it's a rolling target as well. At any point, basically up to third reading of the financial plan bylaw, I'm sure Council's eager and excited to receive feedback on the financial plan. And then once the financial plan bylaw is annually adopted, then the Village is able to adopt the tax rates bylaw, which is a separate bylaw that basically says what the tax rates are going to be by different tax classes. So that's your residential, commercial, institutional. And the plan needs to explicitly state, the financial plan needs to explicitly state what the funding sources are, the expenses, and the objectives, and some of the policies that are driving the Village's financial plan for the coming years. So that's a high-level overview on the Village's budget process, or rather budget processes generally in British Columbia. It's there's also a roadmap that Council reviewed in October that drive some of the items that the Village Council are wanting to make sure that are included in the process. And that includes items like, exactly what kind of format, public input is going to be coming in, and also what kind of, process to adoption and what kind of, lenses the Council wants to review the budget through. So one of the main mechanisms for as many folks know, one of the main mechanisms that the village has to, fund its operation is through property taxes. Remaining amounts, through the average, municipal tax dollar are often remitted to other entities. But describing the jurisdictional makeup for who does what in the village of Pouce Coupe or the province generally can be really helpful for residents in understanding where exactly their money goes and who is accountable for spending what money they provide to the government. So an example, would be regional districts are providing solid waste management services, regional emergency management and disaster response, regional planning and growth management, recreation, culture, and service funding partnerships, of which the Village of Pouce partners with the RD on, regional utilities and services where applicable. The province provides policing, partnership with the federal government, solid waste and recycling, emergency coordination, so regional and provincial emergency coordination, hospitals, healthcare, education, provincial highways, environmental regulation and oversight. The federal government, as folks I'm sure are fairly familiar, provides federal infrastructure funding, seniors income supports, Indigenous relations, national defense and border services, federal lands and maintains federal lands and assets, a wonderful park system, and some other national transport infrastructure. The business that's largely the subject of the financial plan that's in front of you in this presentation is the services that are provided by the Village of Pouce. So that includes local roads, sidewalks, and snow removal, includes water distribution and sewer collection within the village boundaries, storm drainage and ditching, fire protection and emergency planning, parks, playgrounds, and community facilities, land use planning, zoning, and permits, and bylaw enforcement. So those are some examples of the services that the village enters into. This is a helpful lens that council has, I think enjoyed over the last few years, which demonstrates of the tax dollars that are remitted to the village or that are provided to the village. A large portion goes to fund functions that are provided by other jurisdictions. So the village collects on behalf of different jurisdictions and remits those dollars to those organizations. So this was vetted, by our CFO this year. And, for the 2026 financial plan, about 52.5 cents out of every dollar that's sent to the village go to directly fund village operations. So that would be roads, public works, parks, fire protection, administration. So all those things that we discussed earlier. About 16 cents of every dollar sent to the village goes towards the Peace River Regional District. So that includes remittances for shared services like waste management, regional planning. About 4 cents goes to our CMP for provincial policing. About 27 cents goes for provincial education tax. Sometimes and often a helpful way to rationalize this one is, everybody, takes part or pays provincial education tax to live in a society that educates, the youth. So it ends up being a helpful thing that indirectly benefits all residents. And there's a number of miscellaneous other levies that total about a penny or less than a penny per dollar. So this slide is pretty helpful as well. It shows a high-level picture of where the money comes from, or the operating revenue that the village is anticipating for 2026. So there are multiple revenue sources here. You can see that there's 3 big components in the pie chart that's pictured there. One being property tax, another being utility fees, and a large one being government transfers. And just to dig into the government transfers one a little bit, this will often refer to grant funds or include grant funds. This will include a funding source that we're going to dig into in a moment called the Peace River Agreement, which is an important allocation that's provided for communities in the northeastern part of BC and really helps the village and is nominally intended to help the village confront some of its infrastructure gaps and offset costs associated with resource development in the Northeast. But overall, I think the village, attempts through investment income and trying to leverage grant funds that are available. The village tries to diversify revenue sources, all to try to relieve a little bit of pressure on property taxation, because that is an important, affordability has been a key theme that I think council has been considering in their, financial planning this year. And, to that end, village staff have been looking hard to see what kind of external funding sources can be utilized to try to drive value, but also maintain affordability for residents. So, as a part of council's budget review process in early January, council reviewed a series of the services that it provides and assessed their relationship between a few different, basically a few different perspectives on village operations. So baskets, if you will. So the first basket is statutory, non-discretionary, or life safety services. And these include water and sewer utilities, fire department and emergency preparation, legislative services, essential infrastructure, administration, and information technology. And the reason that these are, grouped into this category is because they probably have the most friction, or they are legally impossible for the village to not perform as distinct services. They are more or less required. In the case, just to stretch that a little bit more, very theoretically, the village isn't required to operate a fire department, but I'm not aware of a municipality in BC that doesn't operate a fire department because of its crucial role in preserving life and the safety of property across the province. The next basket is core operational services. So these support the daily functioning of the village and enable it to meet its legal obligations. So that includes things like snow removal, pothole repairs, signage maintenance, includes keeping up with municipal buildings and replacing vehicles as they age out or as they break down. It involves planning and development. So that means us performing some of the discretionary components of land use planning, permitting, zoning compliance. And it includes community oversight. So that includes bylaw enforcement, cemetery administration, and engineering for special projects. And there's also regional collaboration. So working with other local governments, either through the regional district or elsewhere, to try to get reasonable outcomes for the residents of the village, or to advocate to the province, to get reasonable results. And then the last basket is discretionary or quality of life services. This involves things like parks and recreation, economic development, and some small community support programs like grant writing services for local nonprofits, and the recently launched Better at Home program for seniors. Some interesting things to reflect on, or some interesting things that this exercise revealed, at least on staff side, were that these baskets of services, although framed as statutory, non-discretionary life safety, core operational services, and discretionary and quality of life services, it's interesting to reflect on how many of the discretionary or quality of life services are almost entirely grant dependent. As in, I think council would probably be having a very hard conversation about service continuity in the event that external funding was no longer available for some of those services. And other items are interesting to note where, yes, the timing of certain items can be adjusted, which can impact what the financial picture looks like in any particular year, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have those costs, further on down the road. So, there's council does have broad discretion in the, community charter for what kind of services the village takes on. And I know that council and, myself as working for council, we want to make sure that we're being responsive to community needs, community service priorities. But, ultimately there are some hard choices that are present in the budget that, force council to annually look at the budget very closely. So that brings us to some of the key themes of this year's budget. So in the budget communication or the booklets that are provided to each of y'all, we've got some, I think 4 main themes that are reflected in the draft plan that Mr. Kiriot is going to go through. And the first is really, moving forward and finishing some of the, crossing off some of the priorities that are included in the village's strategic plan. So that includes recreation improvements to the baseball fields in McNabb Park, working on safer school crossings for, village residents, advocating and working in partnership with the province to get that work over the finish line, and working on some infrastructure development, like the execution of an infrastructure master plan to map out and do condition assessments on some village assets. And that moves very nicely into our next theme, which is advancing asset management and completing some infrastructure master planning. So the last few years, I understand that council and many folks in the village's time has been really, really focused on preserving and improving the assets, like the sewer assets of the village, particularly down at the lagoon, with hopefully some of that work, so hopefully with some of the page being turned on some of that work, the village is hoping to focus in or redouble its efforts on upstream system assets in 2026. So that's and there's some offshoot priorities that are, stemming from that, which includes curb stop installations. Council directed the geolocation of all curb stops in the village last fall. That was completed, I believe, in November. As the snow was flying, we were getting nervous, but that was completed in November. And this year we'll begin to, do installs on curb stops that we know are not there. And some hydrant repairs and some paving work as well are also planned for 2026. And a third theme is managing service levels responsibly. So that's, council has continued to look at the services that are provided in the community and make sure that they're driving the value that council expects them to receive for the community. And that's, certainly an ongoing effort, but I think it's something that I won't be surprised if I hear more from council about. And the last theme is leveraging grants to reduce tax pressures. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's a host of grants that the village is looking at or has already applied for to try to drive a little bit of value in some of our different services. And many of them are economic development related. There's a few that are infrastructure and asset management related. And I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of them are about trying to drive value and reduce direct impacts to ratepayers. This probably too small fonted sheet refers to a number of projects that the village is hoping to take on in 2026. So this is a snapshot. The full listing of projects, at least capital projects, is included in Josh's financial plan, and there's been some direct reporting to council with full listings. This is a summary of items that we thought might be interesting to folks that would attend tonight or join in via Zoom, or join in online, I should say. But the first priority that we've got is 2026 road work. There's an annual allocation that council directs that through attrition hopes to see the village at least keep on top of or confront the infrastructure gap that we see. And that's doing small patching and paving, doing replacements, doing sidewalk repairs where necessary. So this is an annual priority, but a significant one. The Peace River Regional District has provided $250,000 to the Village of Coos to assist it in undertaking a fire hall feasibility study and a detailed design for a detailed redesign of the Coos Coopee Fire Hall. And a large portion of the intrinsic value that's been communicated to the Village of Coos Coopee through this contribution from the regional district is to make sure that the village is able to be ready for different grants that come up. in the event that there is a good, grant program that is available, having a shovel-ready project, in other words, detailed design documents are really, really key in, being able to really go for it. So this project is kind of a two-phase one. The feasibility will involve a level of community engagement as determined by council, and it involves evaluating the existing site, seeing whether or not it currently meets the fire needs for the community. It considers potential renovations to the existing site or additions to the existing site, or it contemplates an entirely new site. So it's a fairly wide open feasibility study, and there'll probably be more down the line in the coming months to members of the public about that effort. Project number 3, light-controlled school crossings. So a long-standing priority of the village is preserving pedestrian safety for folks that are driving through Highway 2. It's a pretty darn important thing, and I think it emphasizes, I suppose, the community's concern with making sure that the youngest members of our community that are attending Pooskoopi School are able to get to school and from school safely. To that end, council has authorized an amount in the financial plan of $80,000 that can help the village try to drive the importance of this project with the province. Ultimately, highway improvements are the province's obligation, but I understand that the hope of this effort here is it can help us demonstrate that the village is quite serious and quite adamant about these improvements being made. And there's also the opportunity, and I think even the direction, if I remember correctly, from council, that these funds be leveraged with grants to try to help drive that importance home to the province. And there's been a modest amount of success to date, but I think announcements are still to come on that. Village Office Park Playground. So this is a multi-year effort. It's been ongoing. The village has been fundraising for improvements to the Village Office Park and revitalization of its playground for a couple of years at least. And the 2026 draft financial plan includes a allocation from 2023 fund disbursement from the provincial government called the Growing Communities Fund that would basically see the donations received to date and the Growing Communities Fund grant amount utilized to do a phased improvement at the park itself. So these plans have been firmed up. We feel we've gotten some good information together for council, and they'll be going to council tomorrow evening for their option to say looks good, or do some more homework, or something else. Cemetery walking path improvements. Right now, there's a there's a beautiful walking, or sorry, there's a great trek or a great pathway, series of pathways in the Riverview Cemetery. There is a bumpy asphalt path to the columbarium, which has posed a bit of an access challenge for some members of the public that do want to make it to the cemetery. So there's a small expense included in here to basically see that repair done and make that path a little bit more smooth. Speaking of smooth, I'm realizing I should probably speed it along here. I've been going for some time. Asset replacement. So there's 2 village trucks in the village fleet that are slated for replacement in 2026. And there is a grant fund that the village has received that is leveraged in the 2026 financial plan for replacement of those trucks. And there is a second phase of a property purchase adjacent to the Public Works Yard that is expected to complete in 2026 as well. So this is a probably too wordy overview of some of the major 2026 projects that are contemplated in the financial plan. How are we doing? Do we need a breath of fresh air? Any questions? No? Okay. Yeah, Vinny.
On the solar proposal, is it just on how much solar it is, or is it a flat amount?
So the question from Vinny who's in attendance in the room here, was whether or not there's just a flat amount assumed in dollars for snow removal, or whether it's a service-based target that we have annually. So there's kind of two answers to that. One, council does set a service standard, that they want to see in the community annually, and that's prescribed through their snow removal policy. And it says that, it says from council formally to my position and all other staff that they expect, roads to be done to a certain standard when there's X amount of snow, more than 6 inches of snow. The village will, go out and, do the roadways first, and eventually work their way all the way down to, residential areas and then laneways, et cetera. So that's often a guiding document that helps us, make sure that people are able to get out and about in the community. At the same time, there is a dollar figure, that's assumed in this plan. And I think the two of them work in tandem with each other, where, the council expects myself to not, blow the bank or, spend, spare no expense in getting through the, amounts of snow that we have either. So if either one of them are becoming problematic, I think council expects me to report back to them and let them know that I'm running into challenges. But at the end of the day, for the service side of things, I'd probably lean more on the policy. Not sure if there's anything. Okay.
Very much.
Right on. Thanks, Vinny. Good question. Strategic plan. So council is there is I think we're in the third year or the second year of the current strategic plan for the village. Third year. So the current strategic plan that the village has a 6-year time horizon and longer for a series of priorities that council hopes to see in the village. And council had a review session in January this year to look at some progress and confirm some of the priorities that are remaining for the rest of the year. Some of the projects or successes to date include reinforcements and upgrades to the village lagoon, development of an aging seniors program, hiring of an economic development officer, and the institution of an ongoing bylaw and policy review program under the leadership of our trustee intern, Jimmy. And there's a series of short-term priorities that have been re-emphasized or reaffirmed by council. And that includes infill commercial and residential development bylaw. That's going forward tomorrow night to council. There's community recreation updates, accessibility improvements to the village office playground, a whole host of priorities over the next little while. But council has, reviewed that document and is, I think, largely reaffirmed that, the priorities that are included in it are, still important, for the village. But yeah, there's some good progress to date. And I think a lot of the items that are slated for 2026 are included in this year's financial plan as well. So not all of them hit, let's say, the capital threshold, that I would parse out in here. Some of them are included in operating lines, but there is tangible progress. And this is just another pair of glasses that you can view the financial plan with. If you, you can view the financial plan as an expression of council's, strategic priorities for the coming year.
And the communities.
Forgive me. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. No. The community members might forget they actually took part in this strategic planning session shortly after the election happened in 2022. We had a big open house here. They came out and they stuck sticky notes to boards and highlighted for council what the priorities were. And then so this is a shared strategic plan between the wants of the community and the wants of myself and council.
Mayor Veach, for those that are joining online, she's helpfully pointing out the public participation that was present during the during the strategic planning process over the last couple of years, and is again helpfully reminding me that this strategic plan of council also belongs to the community. So a good reminder. Tax implications for property owners. So this is as a part of the frame up for the current draft of the financial plan. The council reviews a series of scenarios. Initially, they reviewed a 5%, 7%, and a 10% scenario for consideration. The two scenarios that are provided for in this slide here are the 5% increase scenario for a residential property valued at $300,000 and a 5% increase scenario for a commercial property valued at $500,000. So, and that's that 5% target is what council has most recently directed staff to assume in its further preparation of the financial plan. Ultimately, it ain't over until the bylaw is adopted, but this is the current assumption that staff are operating under. So for a residential property worth $300,000, the 2025 village tax estimate would be $1,263.51, with a 5% increase in general municipal, or actually in the mill for that particular property, it would be $1,326.69. So that would be $63.18 extra per year, or $5.27 per month. On the commercial property tax side, if there's a $500,000 property that was paying $4,543.32 in 2025, with a 5% increase, that property would be paying $4,770.70, which is a change of $227.18 per year, which is $18.93 per month. So again, it's tax implications are something that staff know the council look at very closely, and again, keeping in mind that theme of affordability, but also keeping the themes of asset management obligations, asset retirement obligations, and making sure that the village is protecting against vulnerabilities present with its use of Peace River Agreement funding. So this it's a good seg into Peace River Agreement. Large factor, that's driving some of the gradual general municipal tax increases in the village over the years has been a multi-year effort to limit operating budget reliance on Peace River Agreement funds. So while those funds are really important for the village, they're externally provided by the province and could be subject to change. If the province ever wanted to adjust the PRA formula, or if the agreement wasn't renewed in its current form, the village would face, depending on either an immediate massive tax spike or an immediate service cut, basically. So council has been looking to prioritize PRA funding increasingly towards capital and one-time infrastructure investments, while supporting ongoing operating costs with more stable, predictable revenue sources like municipal tax. So this is an excerpt, this piece below on this slide is an excerpt from Peace River Regional District report that was provided by Mayor Veach, which offers some high-level fund use guidance from the province with respect to the Peace River Agreement. And it's a kind of a fun acronym called CAMPS. So it identifies some of the prioritization that the province expects to see with the use of Peace River Agreement funds. So C refers to capital and is the highest priority. So that involves acquisition of land, machinery, equipment, vehicles, and construction. AM for asset management, which is a middle priority. It includes maintenance of related capital items. P for planning, so that involves official community planning, financial planning, engineering studies, master plans, development cost charges, infrastructure plans. And S for services. So this is the lowest priority in the fund use guidance from the province. That includes service costs not related to capital or planning for like protective services, rec services, or general governance services. So I am certain that anybody listening is tired of hearing my voice. I'm going to hand it over to Josh's capable hands.
Thanks, Duncan. Just to build off of the CAMPS acronym and just to provide, I guess, some context towards where the village currently sits, in particular in relation to the 80% of eligible costs being capital and asset management and planning. The village currently sits in a place where the majority, around 65% of Peace River Agreement funding is spent on planning and non-capital related services, and 35% approximately spent on the capital and asset management side of things. So it's we're in kind of a reverse scenario of where we should be. However, are progressing to close that gap, even as more recently as last year was in like a 70-30 split. This budget here assumes close to a 60-40 split in that realm. So keeping in mind a couple of things. One, I was posed this question at some point in the past by, I believe, one of the councillors, that if, you know, a wall was built around Poos and nobody was able to come in or out, would we be able to sustain ourselves without this funding? The answer currently is no. And it is integral to not only village operations, but also kind of that long-term financial planning piece from a village perspective with respect to capital asset management and asset replacement and retirement obligations, as Duncan has pointed out. So there is a tendency, I guess, from my perspective, from a financial side of things, to reduce that dependence on the Peace River Agreement from an operating perspective, and shift some of that spending into whether it's long-term asset management planning or current asset needs coming through the Peace River Agreement. Just to touch on one other piece from Duncan, the village does a wonderful job and is of procuring grants and other related grant monies to operate, which helps with the tax obligations from a village perspective. And needs to continue to do so in order to sustain operations. I would say it's my position that the village and council in particular wants to see tax rates stay very close to where they currently are at, and is very mindful of tax rate increases on residents. And so budget has been built with those pieces in mind. And in particular, the 5% scenario that we're referring to here from a draft financial plan perspective, included in that 5% increase is a general overview increase from a BC assessment perspective in the range of 4.2%. So that is inclusive in that 5%. So the actual village tax rate increase, if you want to put a percentage on it, is less than 1, 0.8. At the end of the day. And as we saw from the tax rate increase stuff, and we've had this conversation before at council meetings, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I would venture to guess it's less than a large coffee from Starbucks per month. It's pretty minimal at the end of the day to residents, which is wonderful, and is wonderful that the village is able to maintain a low tax rate while still providing these services. But we also need to be kind of forward thinking in terms of if there was a scenario where the Peace River Agreement did not exist anymore, or we were forced to reduce that spending down to, say, a $200,000 mark from an operating perspective, what implications would that have on budget long term? Yes, sir.
Just for you guys here, so I've been a bit of a nerd on this. And I kind of compared every other municipality's proposed tax rates and all these things. So our roughly 0.8% mill rate increase, as far as I can tell, is the lowest proposed tax increase of any municipality in BC. For this year.
Thank you for that. So the Peace River Agreement is interesting as well. There's yearly reporting that happens on that as well. It's monitored from a provincial perspective. We're required to report our spending on it, and required to allocate how we allocate dollars on that report as well. So that has been submitted. I've not received any feedback, but this end of this last fiscal year in 2025 was an end of a funding cycle for the Peace River Agreement, which required a larger report. So I'm curious to get some feedback from those folks in terms of kind of the historical piece over the last 5 years and how the village has used those funds, and any suggestions that the Peace River Agreement folks may have in terms of future planning obligations, or maybe suggestions that may come from that. The other piece there, I guess, to note too, this is more from a capital perspective, is that the village has done a wonderful job of procuring an extensive amount of grant funding over long before my time involved in this role, which comes with some stipulations around, there's a requirement that it be spent. And so, in particular, if we're talking, zooming down here, yes. If we're talking capital related projects, related to LGCAP, which is a local government climate action plan. So if we're looking at replacing trucks, for instance, those trucks have to be economical. So you're talking like hybrid or some sort of vehicle like that as an example. There's another pot of money here, gas tax. So that's from the provincial government as well. That has spending limitations on it in terms of what it can be spent on, but the village over time has accumulated these funds over time, and now the province is asking, why aren't you spending these funds? Pardon me? GCF. And the Growing Communities Fund is the last one that you see kind of just above the LGCAP up there as well. That again has some historical accumulation to it that also needs to be starting to draw down, because they're starting to ask questions essentially like, why are you holding this and what are you doing with it? So so there is a lot of capital expenses here from a budget perspective for this year. They are all 100% grant funded or grant dependent, including the Peace River Agreement funding. Any municipal property taxes that are collected are directly funneled into the operating side of things. And even with other government transfers, the use of the Peace River Agreement, municipal taxation, all of those pieces, we would still be looking at a 5% increase of a reserve transfer of around $140,000 currently to balance the budget. So, which is, you know, from a reserve perspective right now, the village has no debt obligations, which is a great place to be. Has money that's in reserves that continues to accumulate interest revenue on it. Some of that is grant funding that does need to be spent, so that's going to be drawn down over time. And we can't plan for deficits all the time. We can't plan for a deficit. We have to account for it at the end of the day, whether that's through a reserve transfer, but we can't be dependent on reserve transfers forever. And so there's a precarious balance that we're going to be having to work through, particularly over the next couple of years, as we massage out kind of what that Peace River Agreement funding looks like. How do we manage our long-term assets we have from a reserve perspective, and how do we offset that with operating revenues and stuff like that? So if you're running a business, and just put some context into it, if you're running a business and you had $100,000 in revenues and you spent $200,000 a year and you had $500,000 sitting in reserves, and that's where your revenue and expense stayed, after 5 years, you're going to be in some trouble. And so, not saying that the village is going to be in trouble after 5 years, but we are running a company or a business at the end of the day, and are responsible for these pots of money and being accountable for these pots of money as well. So, financial health of the village is in a super good position. I think the auditors would agree with us. We're just starting to go through that now. But now's the time to start thinking about how do we kind of plan longer term. Duncan had mentioned earlier, there's some sewer and water infrastructure assets in the village that are in the 80+ year range. It's roads that need to be repaved, all those different pieces. So as we all know, those things aren't cheap. And so just things we need to be mindful of. Yes.
Just for transparency's sake, how much money do we have in the reserve? Just so people look at this and they go, oh, well, you're pulling 144,000. If we have 150,000, that's a big issue. If we have 10 million.
Yeah, conservatively, I don't have the exact number in front of me because it is based on investment. It's in the $5 million range currently. Yeah. So held in like GICs essentially. So yep.
I'm not sure if it matters, but I guess with the provincial budget, issues going on in the district and impact on a small village like us?
It's a great question. At this time, I don't know, Jimmy. So, yeah, I think we're all trying to unpack kind of where, you know, our province has a proposed $13 billion deficit, I think, for this upcoming year, right? And so what does that mean? Duncan, I don't know if you've had conversations around that or?
A couple of knockoff effects from this year's provincial budget that the village is anticipating. One is council directed an application to the Fire Smart program in November of last year. That fund has since expired, and the province is given a few, you know, messages about what they're intending to do with that funding, but it looks like it's in a holding pattern presently. Another one is property tax deferral program has been reshaped for seniors, where previously I think it was just a 2% flat deferral that was permitted. I think it's now prime +2. So I think there's a few different shifts that are included in and that were just announced last week in this year's provincial budget that may impact how business gets done on for the village of Pouce. There have been a number of other funding announcements or funding announcement changes from the province on Housing Accelerator Fund grants and things of that sort, but I don't know that those hit the village so much. So,
thank you. Any other questions at all?
Rebecca?
Oh.
I could probably speak to it, so.
Please stay engaged.
Good on. Well, yeah, Josh, just thanks, Josh, for walking us through the plan itself and talking through some of the broad themes that are kind of driving the overall prep that's included in the plan. We've got a wonderful image there of the Pouce Coupe Museum being sited in 1972. But the overall thrust of you know, just as we come to the end of the presentation itself, and we'll get to questions in a moment, is just to encourage residents to continue to stay engaged on the village's financial plan. There's a lot of different ways that residents can, you know, stay in touch with us, and that's by, you know, giving us a shout, sending us an email, you know, following us on social media or on our website, and even checking out all of our meetings on YouTube there. So it's there's a lot of wonderful ways to, you know, keep in the know, but also if you want to provide your feedback and make sure that, you know, your voice is heard on the village's budget for, you know, this coming year, I'm sure that council would be all too happy to receive that feedback. So in light of that, maybe I'll hand it over to Mayor Beach to answer or field, I suppose, any questions that there are.
Are there any current questions you guys have regarding the budget? Yeah, a minute.
Given the current proceed to the ridge, is there any contingency in the budget regarding those streeters?
Well, so that runs under the school district 59 does have, you know, active safeties within place within all schools throughout the whole district. And so that definitely runs more under the school district bit. You know, Pouce Coupe does have, we pay into our policing services. We have a first responders through our fire department. We have home safety programs that we try to run normally through the library every year towards seniors or those with disabilities at home. So there are a bunch of different programs that are in place, and each of them kind of run a little bit differently. But yeah, no, definitely. I know in light of that, it's definitely brought up a lot of questions around safety, around community safety. And that's definitely been something that's been on everybody's radar for quite some time. And that's just really brought it out more to the public to really enhance that conversation.
To add to Mayor Beach's comments, in the days after that horrific event in Tumbler Ridge, council was emphatic and, you know, making sure it was supportive and, you know, extending whatever offers of support it reasonably could to Tumbler Ridge. So it's, you know, definitely been, you know, our hearts are definitely with, you know, the community of Tumbler Ridge, and, you know, from my part, you know, I've offered support as well. But for the village itself, we did take the opportunity to review some of our emergency procedures and make sure that folks are in the know about those kinds of scenarios, because it's the times we live in, man. It's really, really sad.
Yes, Cindy.
I was just gonna point out, as you're saying, is excluding the gym and library. The main part of the school, you cannot enter unless you are let in, there's a doorbell to be let in.
Yeah.
So that is a safety precaution, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's on behalf of the school district 59 schools, yeah. Yeah, any other questions? You mean we nailed it that well?
Nobody has any problem.
We're tears. That's
Team high five, we're two tears.
how we.
You can ask her, so you're hilarious.
Right on.
Awesome.
Not so much towards the budget, but what is the population?
So the population, I think we're around 780 almost.
Yeah.
It's gone up a little bit, hasn't gone up much, but we've definitely had a really interesting population shift. So quite a few of our oil and gas families in the past couple of years have definitely moved over to the Alberta side, just with the insecurity of the oil sector. There were lots of different pipelines closing down throughout here in Fort Nelson, and so that created a bit of that instability. And what we've actually seen is we have a lot of brand new families coming up from Richmond, Surrey. We have a couple of a family from Egypt. We have, so there was the population has changed, but it was more sort of people moving out and people moving in. And so it was a very measured flux, which was really, really neat. So yeah. No.
My kids only got on the bus, and like years, they were only 2 kids that got on the bus to the bus stop. And now there's like 5, 6 kids that get on the bus.
Yeah. Well, and I know when I worked here at Poughkeepsie Elementary School in 2014, we had about 50 students. And I think now they're up to about between 110 and 120. So that gives you a bit of an idea. Yeah. But it's really, really interesting. Yeah. So in the past 12 years, we've seen a big family shift, which is really, really nice. Yeah.
The population's growing a little bit.
It is growing a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. We're always projecting for, more, but any other questions? No, we killed it, Duncan. All right. The people online are going to have all the questions, and
We'll be happy to
they'll
field.
be
Yeah.
emailing them in, hopefully.
Right on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much. I'll shut that off. Oh, I gotta go to the other screen.